With that, we move on. Next, we have Cyril Perducat, Senior Vice President and Chief Technology Officer, Rockwell Automation. Cyril, please.
Yeah, so hello everyone. So it's great to be here. I've not been in the RC forum for some time, at least since I joined Rockwell some years ago. So I'm glad to be here with, as Greg said, some old friends and new friends. We at Rockwell Automation, I'm the Chief Technology Officer of Rockwell Automation, and I think there is no specific need to introduce Rockwell. I think a lot of the people in the audience know Rockwell. Global player in industrial automation, pure play in that space. There is nothing that distracts us from industrial automation and any other topic. I think when I look at the initial introduction and the trends, I will concur with what you said. I think we will all agree that this is a pattern that describes our environment, but I think we are going to discuss today about applied AI. That's one more technology over the years, but I think this is different. I think we are living different times because it puzzles me to see that you have only 20% of the people, as per the introduction, that are really onto digital transformation. I think one of the reasons is that in our industry, for the past 20 years or 15 years, there has been a little bit too much conversation about technology and not sufficient conversation about outcomes and how do we actually solve problems with the right technology. So my hope in this conversation about AI is that in our perspective at Rockwell Automation, AI is really about every single part of our portfolio. I don't think there is any specific part in our portfolio that is not affected in a positive way. And it's funny for me to see that we call these disruptive technologies. They are disruptive only if you don't do anything about it. Otherwise, they are transformational or reinventing technologies. I think AI is different in a way that there are a lot of things that we have been talking about around digital transformation, the value of connectivity, data, a lot of things that really create the intersection with those new problems we are speaking about, the ones that were discussed this. And at Rockwell Automation, whenever we look at the design part of our portfolio, how can you design an automation system in a faster, safer, more insightful way? How can you document code in an easier way? That's one of the topics that we are looking at. The space of simulation, how do we use simulation so that we can support code generation is another aspect. In operations, we were discussing just before starting this panel about autonomous operations. I think this is an area where there is a lot of things that could be done and what we focus quite a lot. And of course, maintenance. I think when you look at maintenance, there is a promise on predictive maintenance that have been not really addressed, in my view, in the past years. It's really time to move and to leverage AI to move to more prescriptive maintenance, not this is my problem, but this is what you could do about it, and taking into consideration safety, security, and other aspects. So that's what we are focusing on at Rockwell, really leveraging applied AI all across our portfolio to reinvent our value proposals, solve new problems or older problems in a new way, and having an impact on our industry in the context of all those different problems that we are all facing with our customers that we have described before.
Good. Thank you, Cyril. Next, we have Gino Hernandez, Global Digital Business Leader from ABB. Gino, please make your comments.
Absolutely, thank you. So at ABB, what I'm responsible for is all of the product, all of the R&D, and delivery and go-to-market for our digital solutions in process automation energy industries. Been with Rockwell Automation, ABB now for 4 years, but prior to coming to ABB, I was with Rockwell Automation for 10 years. Before that, I was with IBM for 10 years before that. At ABB, where we're focused on in the digital space is really around digital transformation, helping our customers in that transition journey. And so what does that mean for us? That means for us, we're looking at technologies that enable customers to enhance their asset performance. We're looking at technologies that enable them in the MES and MOM space and operational excellence, increasing operations of their workflows and making them more efficient. We're looking at technologies around process performance and APC technologies and how do we help them increase their process. And then we're looking at technologies in the area of sustainability. For us, in the sustainability space, we're focused on energy optimization, we're focused on carbon intensity management. And as you link all of these technologies together, well, we then bring along our cybersecurity solutions and enable them to do this in a cyber-secure manner. And so as we take a step forward beyond just our technologies, and you link these technologies together, we begin to move into a space called integrated operations, or a journey towards autonomous operations. And so for us, we've been doing AI for over 10 years. So now we're linking AI technology with ML technology, with digital twin technology, and generative AI technologies. So for us, we all know the value in moving into this space. Now we're looking at, what use cases and what functional areas do we want to help our customers address. So for us, it's around code generation. We've developed thousands and thousands of projects. So for us, we have access to data repositories of all this code that's been generated. So when you're creating a new facility, and your new facility, let's say it's a specialty chem facility, 700,000 lines of code that have to be generated. Because we have access to the repositories, when we're able to put against generative AI models against this, we're able to actually generate this code, let's say 60 to 70% of that code for that facility, for that particular customer, enabling them to move much further and much faster in the build process. Then we get into the operations aspect, and now we're really looking at technologies, what I would call lane assist, and that's looking at the operating envelope for an asset and helping customers stay within that optimal operating envelope beyond just APC technologies, looking at asset performance, and then as asset performance begin to weigh, having the technology to compensate for those technologies upstream and downstream of a specific piece of equipment that's failing, and being able to compensate for that. And then getting into areas like shift change, being able to ask the system what area of the facility needs to be addressed for them, what things should they know about, what happened in the prior shift, what are the things they need to be planning for as they move through those days. And then we get into areas such as maintaining that asset. So when an asset begins to fail, understanding the failure mode, understanding the impact of that failure on operations, being able to schedule itself for maintenance, knowing that there's going to be a maintenance event in 2 weeks. So being able to actually schedule itself for that maintenance, creating the work order, ordering the ticket for the spare, and starting that process automatically on its own. So these are the technologies that we're beginning to link together as we pull our digital portfolio of solutions and bring them to bear to our customers.
Yeah, thanks, Gino. I like to start a little bit, pick up on sort of theme that we heard from our three speakers this morning. Obviously, Gino, Nico focused very much on data centrality and ownership, and obviously Michael has Exxon Mobil team vision of open digital ecosystem and new way of working. And then we heard from Rob where industry is trying to come together, work together, and see what they can do to come up with some standards and move forward. I would like to hear any comments from you folks, Lucien and Cyril and Gino. Could you start, Lucien? Yeah. What do you have?
Yeah. So again, I mentioned earlier, and I think you saw it in the presentations today, we mostly agree, or actually in violent agreement on the problem statement. And for the most part, I think if you went into individual conference rooms in our respective companies, you would see similar looking answers to the problem. And so the logical question that we should all ask ourselves is, why is the adoption not accelerating, and why are we where we are? And I would tell you, and I know a lot of you have global responsibility and work in a lot of places in the world, it's not uniform around the world. There are parts of the world where things are actually moving a little faster, and I think that should be a wake-up call for all of us here in this room, because part of it is you can't, it's not easy and cheap to prototype this. You can't ship AI in a box and somebody opens it. It requires co-creation. It requires an upfront investment. It requires a belief. But the solution is there. We know it's going to work. We know it's going to deliver value. And I think couple that with the skill gap that we have today, couple that with the needs that we have today, I'm very, very encouraged that 2025 is actually the turning point. But it's one of those, like anything in life, it had to get bad enough for it to get better. And when I travel to Mexico or to India and I hear from my customers that they have a skill gap and a labor shortage, first I have to check whether I'm jet lagged and I don't remember where I am. But in fact, no, I'm in India, I'm in Mexico, and they are worried about a labor shortage and a skill gap for the most part. So this is a universal problem that we're trying to tackle. And again, we have the tools. So now it's how do we put together the partnerships. And you've probably seen some of the announcements at Honeywell. We're working with people like Google, with Qualcomm, with others. But in the end, I remain very encouraged that this is not, and we might have folks from the tech space here, whether it's Microsoft or Google, this is something that will still, for the foreseeable future, require subject matter expertise. So for the foreseeable future, still, those of us that can deal with the molecules, with the electrons, that can deal with the hardware and the software, there's going to be a place for that for at least the foreseeable future. I know there's a vision to decouple a lot of those things, but in the end, we still need that subject matter expertise coupled with the AI tools. So that's what I think is in front of us. That's why I'm excited about the future, and I think the future is now. It's somewhere out there.
Okay, we can again continue. Cyril, go ahead.
Yeah, I think I agree that we are at a turning point. I think, as I was saying in my short intro, AI is different because it comes at a time where a certain number of problems that we have to solve are all in the same category. They are optimization problems. They are about optimizing different things that contradict each other, and AI brings the technology to be able to do this. But we have to do it as an industry differently. I think we need to bring the right customer experience. We need to bring the right business model. It's not just a technology. I think it's a profound factor of reinvention of different things. When we speak about this transition from automation to autonomy, it's profound. We have lived in an industry where this is all about programming something, and we move to something where programming is just going to be a task in the background and ultimately is going to be done by AI. But as you said, subject matter expertise is what we encapsulate into AI. AI is just a container where we encapsulate this subject matter expertise. We have not found an AI today that is yet able to produce knowledge that is beyond what it has been trained for. Okay, this will come at one point of time. But I think this creating not just one more fancy technology conversation like we have seen in the past, but really making productizing those different technology, not necessarily something as simple as in a box, but making the experience, the configuration, the installation faster is what our customers are expecting, so that we really get the benefit of AI. I think that should be a very important focus point.
Thanks, Cyril. Gino?
Sure. I think two of the main parts have already been discussed, but I think what I saw when I first came here to ABB is that we had the technology, but our customers, when they were wanting to get started, they were thinking too big. And so I went actually out and I hired a guy to come work for us from McKinsey. And he had a McKinsey consulting background. But what we do now with customers is we actually we take the vision of where they want to go. Where is it that you want to, of course, all customers want to move towards autonomous. That's great. But do they have the fundamental strategy and roadmap for getting there? And so what we'll do is we'll sit down and work with the customer on where is it they want to be at the end of year 1, year 3, year 5. And then we say, okay, we look at the technologies that they have and say, okay, now based on where you're at, the technologies that you have today, here's what your roadmap should look like. And we start off by breaking it into scope pieces and parts that enable them to move forward and show value. And as they show value, earn the right to continue to move forward with the executive suite. Because all of us have the technologies on the asset performance side and on the operational excellence side, process performance side, et cetera. But for customers, we make it too overwhelming for them to get started. And so since we've made that transition, actually, Nico went through that process actually with us, with the gentleman by the name of Cody Falcon. But we sat down with Nico. We understood where Nico wanted to go with his vision of Sierra Lawn. And then once we understood where he wanted to go, we started laying out what that digital foundation would look like that would enable him to realize that vision. And so that's, I think, one of the different things that we do here within the ABB digital organization that I think really helps our customers turn this concept into tangible value.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe let me ask this question. Certainly, I think this question is open to all of you. Yes, in the case of obviously, Nico, he has the luxury of starting with a greenfield plant, but I know as our industry, we got so much investments in our legacy systems and so forth. I think what might be a good conversation here is what is the biggest challenge and what is it that we could do as an industry together to move us faster in this journey, because clearly we know there is a lot of challenges and I think we are gathered here more to talk about what can we do as an industry, and it's certainly bigger than any one company and so forth. We need to tackle it as an industry, and what is the biggest challenge, and perhaps what is it one or two things we could do. Again, I would open up. Who would like to start us? Okay, all right, Rob, go ahead.
Yeah, Andy, I think for me, there's no lack of technology. Never been any lack of technology. And that is not the issue. The issue is with the people and the mindset. And I'll talk about myself. 37 years at BP. I spent the first 13 years in our downstream and our chemicals and refining, and then 18 years in our upstream major projects, and then the last 6 years in digital. And I remember when I realized how far behind. I think, Michael, you said it as well, humbling when you go and look at other industries. So 2016, I think it was, we were encouraged to go and, see what other industries are doing. And we went out and I heard about this Industry 4.0. Remember, this is 2016. Be kind. 2016. I thought, what's Industry 4.0? And they said, it's the fourth industrial revolution. And I said, well, I knew there was a first industrial revolution. That was sort of steam in 17. What was number 2 and number 3? And anyway, so that was when I realized we were so insular within BP. And certainly, I was in the projects organization, so we were metal bashers, so fair enough. But that's the bit that really made me think, oh my God, we've got to look and learn from what's going on outside. But it's change. It's people changing, the mindset change. That is the most difficult thing. So we've done that over 9 years or 8 or 9 years now within BP. As I now sit with my colleagues on the IOGP, I'm having this almost like Groundhog Day. I'm going back to those same conversations with 10 or 12 different companies. So that to me is the biggest thing is just mindset. And a lot of it will be within the owner-operators. I certainly see it, but just generally through the whole ecosystem.
Yeah.
I'd like to
go
build
ahead.
on that.
Yeah, anybody else? Yeah, go ahead.
I think mindset is one. The other part is adapting to the changing business environment. And as part of that adapting to the changing environments, in my belief, it's more of a, the practices or the business models that we've had 30 years ago are going to have to change, recognizing the technology is changing. So yes, when we talk about OPA, this is an area where I get, all excited. I don't want to hear about OPA-like or similar, or it's either going to conform to an open standard or it's not. In an open asset digital twin, right? It's an area where, quite frankly, I'm open as long as you use my software, right? It's I can't tell you how many times I've heard that, right? But I think, to be, humble, it's one of those areas when you look across other industries have found a way to survive in harmony with, owners and assets, but they both have to adopt, what I would say business practices in terms of capability so that there is fun in it for everybody. And I think, to me, one of the biggest things that is limiting our industry to accelerate on this is fundamentally back to the open standards. And whether we're talking data, it's hard to talk about AI without talking about semantic data that you can use over and over again, right, in terms of capability. I think, in the hardware, I think it's still another key point. But this has to be, again, as a group and a team, we need to figure out how we adapt, change, our business practices and commercialization to ensure that there is fun in it for everybody as we approach this. And that, to me, is one of the mindset is a key part, but I also need that we have got to get out of our traditional ways of either supplying the market or, commercialization that is preventing us from accelerating.
Yeah. And go ahead, Nick.
You know what, I think a lot about, and Michael, I appreciate what you said about the mindset, but it's also the objective and what is the strategy of how we're going to get there. I think I serve on some of the industry boards, and we look at the industry and how we need to change. And I many times find that people are, on the one side don't have the same vision, so that you need to understand what is the similar vision of where we want the industry to be, and then make sure that we understand the objective of, what we want to achieve in that, but then have the right strategy. This is the strategy of working together as an industry, and as a strategy, as fundamental, you need to have understanding of what are the critical success factors that I need, and then open, standards, fundamental, different approaches. It's all required to be saying, this is what I need to do. These are the critical things that we need to get in place, and then make sure that we actually deliver that and collaborate and work on that. What we did is we look at, all the work being done by the super majors on, the different standards, whether it's JIP 33 or CFOS, open standards, and we actually combine that and say, makes a lot of sense, how do we incorporate it, but then do the change. But you can't just leave it as a, grandiose vision and the strategy of what you want to achieve. You actually need to be practical and then break it down to the different components. How do I actually do this? Because part of your combination of what you have in the industry, you've got different role players. The owners has got a role player, but the engineering companies has got a role player, the suppliers has got a role player, and all of them should work together. Because part of our challenge that we see is that they've got different objectives, different drivers, and then they have got different ways of solving the problem. But they're solving their problem, not the industry problem and not your problem. So now to make sure that you've got alignment on that, and that takes time and effort to make sure that you've got alignment. So for me, you need to take it to the bigger picture and then break it down into components and then systematically work through that and then use the enabling tools that we've got.
Good. Any of you like to come? Anybody else?
Sure. I think when we're looking at legacy assets, all the knowledge transfer, business process change stuff for sure is there. Some of the fundamental things you run into, it's having access to the data is definitely usually a problem. You usually don't have access to all the data that you need, and so we've got to work that out with the customer. Second is data quality. It continues to be a challenge for us, and I see Michael smiling. But data quality usually runs up in a challenge for us. And then as with these legacy sites, as you begin to connect them, you need to make sure you're doing it in a cyber secure way. So those are kind of, when I'm thinking about legacy assets and the typical problems we run into, those are the three areas that we typically find challenges in.
Yeah. Thanks. Let me bring another aspect. Certainly we have technology suppliers here and the customers, but as they say, you need the whole supply chain. Yes, we can have a great technology and so forth, but, there is a whole lot of other supply chain that plays into it, I'm talking about, EPCs and systems integrators, there's whole other parties and so forth. So it's a whole supply chain that we need to see if that comes along. And do you, that becomes, actually presents even a bigger challenge for sometimes, yes, as individual companies, you can certainly, do what's necessary and so forth, but, you have to deal with, all of these other partners and so forth. Are they coming along with you? Are they with you and so forth? So I think we got to solve a bigger challenge here as well. Anybody likes to comment on this thing?
So just a couple of comments. This is one of these, it's a, habit. You have these dreams, and I don't know if they're nightmares in terms of visions that just, left with you. But I was having a discussion with my team around, do you ever see a world when we stop buying dumb equipment? Right? Just from a standpoint of, to be frank, in a lot of cases, our industry is very, content of buying what I would call, quote unquote, dumb equipment, right? And then you're back to, I want to do all of this generative AI, I want to do all of this data stuff, and you bought a piece of equipment that is not able to communicate open and agnostically, right? Or what's worse? Then we go and invest in, I feel like it's a chop shop. We go back and, let me go add all of these sensors, let me go add everything on there to liberate information to drive to the future. But part of that, it starts with the vision around, it's not going to happen overnight. But when do we get to the future to where back to an open standard in which data can, seamlessly flow within an owner from a sovereignty, but the technology is built into the equipment to where if I think about some of the capabilities that we are imagining, it now is inherent in the design. Right? Because right now, I think this concept of where we're going to use predictive, preventative maintenance, et cetera, it's all an afterthought. It's not part of the design.
Yeah, go ahead, Richard.
And I think that's an excellent point. And I have the privilege right now to collaborate with a customer that much like you, Nico, is building a digitally native plant.
Yeah.
And they're starting with a plot of land from scratch, and they're building that plant with a vision in mind. Mm-hmm. And when you step back and you see how you build that versus how yesterday's was built, that's when you can look and see how big the change actually is. Because you're right, there is no dumb equipment in that plant. Newsflash, there is no HR department, there is no finance department, there's none of that in the digitally native plant. There is a workflow, and there are natural teams that are grouped by workflow and not by functions the way we're grouped. So you're basically completely, which also illustrates the barrier that we're seeing to adoption. Because to your point with open architecture, how we compete, what's our differentiation? Right. 10 years ago, I was the cool dad who knew a shortcut. I can't win anymore because of Waze. Everybody has the same shortcut. And if I think I found it, Waze will close the arbitrage in 2 seconds. So it's all over. Same way, how you compete versus how another company competes, if we have the same open architecture, the same tools, becomes different. How I compete becomes different. So there is a barrier there that comes from all that change, but and that's part of the reason it's disruptive, but it's here. It has to be done. We have real problems that we're having to solve, and I'm excited. This is, it's a technology revolution that's happening. We're in the middle of it, and it's cool, but there are uncertainties.
I agree. And I learned earlier today, it's only disruptive if you're on the defense.
Yes.
It's transformative if you're on the offense, right? So. Exactly.
Yep.
Okay, great. And yet, okay. Folks, please raise your hands if you have any questions. We will bring a mic to you. So get your questions ready. Anybody, and please, ARC folks with the mics, please go around and see if anyone has a question. Let me maybe ask while we are getting, you have a question? Go ahead.
Sure. So you're speaking earlier about some guardrails around AI.
Please state your name and the company if you don't mind.
Okay, sure. So I'm Ben Bishop with Seat Corporation. You were speaking earlier about generative AI and AI guidelines and guardrails. Can you guys talk about sort of what your approach has been to leveraging generative AI and what you mean by those?
Yeah, no, maybe that was what we're looking at IGP. I mean, all of our companies, and there's 27 in total, but there's probably about a dozen that are really, really focused on this. I mean, we're all working on it within our companies. So we've got obviously Microsoft Copilot, OpenAI across, I think it's 30,000 employees within the company. So before we could let that loose, we had to set up some guardrails of how we would use it and training that we had to do. So there's work we've done there. There's also a lot of stuff we've been doing on Gen AI internally on our own data. I guess you'd call it assistance or the foundational, I think was what Greg called it on his slide. So there's a lot of work we've done there, and we've had to put guardrails around how the engineers use it, particularly sort of professional licensed engineers in the US. How are they actually using it? We talk about human in the loop. It's not just the AI making the decisions. It's the AI searching, presenting the information, lessons learned, risks, all of those things, and then the engineers actually making the decisions. But what we said is, look, actually, rather than each of our dozen companies creating our own internal guardrails on how you can use AI responsibly, let's just work that together and let's come up with one industry standard way of doing it across oil and gas. So that's effectively what we're doing, rather than, and it's exactly like safety. In fact, they kicked it off this morning. One of the people in my team is sort of chairing that expert group, but I don't know, I'll need to find out how many folk were there. But this was one of those opportunities that the group said, yeah, absolutely, we're all in on that. So that's what we're trying to do, is just bring everything we're doing internally about how we use it safely, and then creating that and sharing it. And we'll publish it like the life-saving rules, which is something that's published, everybody can see. We'll publish those, I don't know, later this year, as quick as we can. I don't know if that helps answer the question.
Okay. Okay. And go ahead.
I can add a bit there as well. It's the generative AI side within a framework of what you want to do. You know, job descriptions. I need to do procedures and policies, but also then to have the process of actually approving those and say, you know, this is approved. Then the standards within the company of what you can allow to be done and utilized for, whether the data is not breached. You don't go to the outside and share what you're doing, but you've got an internal approach to do that with your own LLM models, and then make sure that you generate, you know, that. But that's only but one step. Once you've got the generative side completed, you also need to go to the next step and say, but how do I maintain this and keep it current? Because then you've just solved the battle until today. But tomorrow you're going to have a new battle, because then you're going to have new things to address in the way I look at this and update it, so that it's a continuous learning process, so that your delivery framework of how you deliver this, whether it's a policy, a process, or a procedure, all of them, you know, incorporates, you know, the both sides of the combination. Because you're going to be drowned in the administration if you don't use the tools to help you with the update. So you need to have both.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. Do we have a question over there? Okay, go ahead, sir.
This is Mark Duck with Shell. So we're talking about, you know, technology and the rate of change of technology, and of course it's happening in this industry. This may be a little bit off the mark, but we're all impacted by financials, and there's also technological change happening in financial systems, monetary systems. Is there any thoughts on how that could play, you know, with our industrial technologies as well?
Well, Michael, I think you
Well, I don't know if I can answer the question, but I will tell you that some time I've spent in the financial outreach, it's been interesting is that, you know, there's a couple of areas where, at least the exposure I've had, the financials have become less about transaction, right? It used to be an area where, quite frankly, accounts receivable, payables, that was the core of the business. Some insight that I've had in terms of the way a lot of that is working today is it's actually all about data mining, right? Think of a credit card company in terms of the work, right? It's where, you know, would they make all of their money on the interest of the revolving debt? Well, actually, in a lot of cases, when you are using that revolving debt, they're collecting data. You've agreed to it, right? And that data is actually providing capabilities to where not only where I was, my age, demographics, et cetera, why I chose what I was buying. And I look at that is that in a lot of cases, what I see in the financial is that it's going on just beyond the transactional and really thinking about the full data that it encompasses when somebody makes a purchase. Now, if I come back to our industry, I still think we're in the transactional phase. And as I've said earlier, I don't think we've really thought hard about how to capture that same level of metadata as part of us in the normal way we do work so that we could actually enrich and get smarter in terms of capability. I think, if I think about, whether it's a machinist in the field or a scaffold builder, et cetera, think of all the, experiential data that they have there with that we don't actually have access to. And have we really thought about, well, what would be the mechanisms that we can kind of grow? And it's really, in my mind, dovetailing on what I saw as an insight to the financial trends.
Anyone else? Go ahead. Yeah.
I can add as well. I think it is financial data and the financial reporting is but one component. But what you need to know is behind it, if I look at the equipment and the pricing and the work that we do there, is to have information, on even the metadata on that asset and that transaction. Is it with a certain company that is doing the procurement where I do buy? Now I can use the financial data to also start looking at, what is the performance of the supplier in relation to the data that is it current, is it trend, is it, worthwhile, is it comparative with other suppliers, are they on time? So now you enrich not just the financial data of the supplier and the equipment, you have that available and you combine that with what you're doing with, for instance, your performance data. But I think as a business, you actually can use the financial data to the next level as well, because now you can start looking at this that's the building blocks of my running of my operations, where I can see the profitability of the organization, with something like the DuPont ratio models. How do I run the business? How do I look at that from a day-to-day? But then I can be innovative and say, let's look at the transfer pricing models that I include in that as well. Because now I can look at how do I make $1 more, because I can utilize it with in the same environment, but within the realms of what I can and cannot do. So I'm not talking about financial engineering, but there is a bit of that in how I treat tax and how do I treat the different pricing models. So, it's a bigger topic, because there's the reporting side, there's the structuring side, but there's also what do I want to do with this and how do I optimize? What do I optimize and how do I do that?
Yeah. Lucia, go ahead.
Yeah, and look, I think if you're in our business, you love complex optimization problems. The more complex, the better, because that's what we do. But you raised a good point. The money side is yet another variable to this already very complex problem. And you look at what do we know today versus just a couple of years ago. Money is more expensive, and geopolitics is less predictable. And this is an industry in general that invests over a very long cycle. So how do you do that? And we learned during COVID that this thing called supply chain flexibility matters. Now add to that emissions, add to that all these other variables. So now you're trying to optimize across the board, and add to that a company, for example, like Aramco, where it was very public, them and SABIC reducing their CapEx budget. They still have to be profitable, they still have to make money. That means money goes to the OpEx side. So now how do you optimize OpEx and CapEx and it still gets you back to getting more out of your assets? I wasn't there when they built the first refinery, but I'm pretty sure nobody thought it's going to last past the first 100 years. Well, we're here, 100 years is over. So now we're into the second 100 years. So how do we how do we get that second 100 years? How do we get that reliability? How do we get that improvement? And that's where I think we're lucky to have this level of technology where we can use predictive models, we can use predictive tools. But the money side and the supply chain flexibility side, I think will play a pretty big role in an already complex system and problem.
Okay, maybe we could move to the next question. There's a question over here.
Yeah.
No?
Yeah, my question is for Lucian. My name is Sunil from NanoPrecise, and I really like your point about the skills gap, Lucian. And so because one of the threats from AI is, massive job loss that everybody's talking about. And, and the first thing, no technology sells with a negativity, right? It sells with a positivity. So my question is about, do you see the AI as a skills gap for meeting the technical shortages in the customer side, or also to upskill the people from their existing jobs so that those repeatable jobs are done by AI while they are continuously upskilled to do a better jobs, which are not possible by AI?
Yeah, look, really appreciate the question because I think it's a great question. There were a few of us sitting before this meeting talking through that. We have some work to do, and engineers are usually not known for being good on the charm offensive. But having said that, you saw the port strikes that we've just had, and one of the settlements of that was to put automation on the back burner because it was viewed as that's going to be reduce employment somehow. So we can't allow this word become a bad word because it isn't. And we can't allow autonomy to be a bad word because it isn't. We've had enough safety incidents just recently, you name your industry, to know that the skill gap is real. So, this will be the first technical revolution that didn't make lives better. I still use the analogy that maybe it's a very poor one, but somebody, when they saw a forklift the first time and they were loading bags one by one, they said, oh my gosh, this is going to kill my job of loading bags. I don't have a long line of people wanting to load bags. I can't find forklift drivers today, and tell me who would rather load bags or drive a forklift. So jobs evolve, jobs change. AI obviously has an element to it where it will change how we live, it will change how we work, but we've already changed how we live and how we work. We do not want to be, as a society, 12 hours tied to a desk. That's a given, and we have a customer, for example, in Chile, Codelco, that runs a remote operating center for their mine. The lithium mine is 2,000 miles away from the remote operating center. So these people you call miners walk in Birkenstocks and blue jeans in Santiago in a big office tower and look at a bunch of screens and have headsets on them, and none of them are upset. They can't go 2,000 miles away in a remote area and work in a lithium mine. They're just fine being called miner working in that office tower, and some days maybe working from home. So that's, society has already decided it's living that way. AI is enabling that. It's making it possible. So I think that's the story we have to continually tell, because otherwise the narrative will become what we saw in the port strike. So I think the answer is yes to upskilling.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, I think on this question, I want to react on the job transformation. Yeah, jobs are going to be transformed by AI. It would be foolish to think that it's not going to be. We can speak about very positive things about job augmentation, and I do this all the time. I'm going to give you superpower with AI and everything. But jobs are going to be transformed. Like in the past, jobs have been transformed by automation, or jobs have been transformed by industry. We in construction, we don't have people digging holes with shovels anymore. We have construction equipment. I think that's good. Okay, but this went through a transformation. We don't have horses anymore. We have cars. Okay, so transformation happened in the past. I think the reason we are uncomfortable with the change of jobs is that until now, it was not us. It was not the white collars that were affected. It was not about the knowledge workers, and we have an expertise, we know something, we decide what we share, what we don't want to share. There is part of our knowledge that what makes us, all the people in that room, white collars, destabilized by all this because some part of our job are going to be done by AI in a better way than what it does today. So all what we were discussing before about the people, the importance of people, change management, experience and everything is for me critical into this because otherwise it's just going to be another disruptive technology that is not going to yield the benefits that is expected. I think we have the opportunity with AI to reinvent jobs in a positive way, and a lot of things that will be done might not be as straightforward as we think. Like I was reading a study done by the World Economic Forum on the future of work, and you can read a lot of things about automatic code generations and everything, and in this future of work today, we are still seeing 10, 15 years from now that computer programmers are still going to be important. Well, because their job is going to be different. You know, they are not going to be focused on programming anymore. They are going to be focused on other tasks where they are going to have a different specific added value. So we need to drive this reinvention of job. We need to drive this transformation altogether because jobs are going to change. I think this is for me the most disruptive part of AI is the reinvention of jobs and employments like we have seen in the past, but probably at a greater scale.
Yeah, thanks. Could we see if there are questions from end users, prefer questions from more customers? Let's see, you are trying to deploy technology users. Do we have any questions? Yeah, please raise your hand. Yeah, we like to see more questions over there. Raise your hand so that our people with, okay, you have a question over there? Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, Keith Schultz from Dow. My question really was for Michael from Exxon around what were some of the biggest pain points on your successful digital twin journey?
So does that assume that the pain is gone? I think it's funny is because like in our company, we're not allowed to use the word pain. We call them tension points now, right? So there are areas where we have constant tension. Honestly, I think what I'm excited about is this digital reality ecosystem that we are, again, from the open asset digital twin, we have gained all the way from our management committee on down support in terms of how we are going to change the way we work. What I would say is that by no means was that just a single PowerPoint and a flip the light switch and okay, here you go. But I think there was a lot of tried and true, and quite frankly, a lot of the people in the room, suppliers and stuff that we've worked with, that helped demonstrated the value of what we're trying to deliver, right? I mean, it doesn't take long when you say, look, I've cut, feed from a project by 4 weeks because I was able to reuse, data that was trusted and known before. Or it doesn't take long for people to where, we've had a case where we had an unfortunate, process safety event. And quite frankly, because we had the digital asset behind, we were able to have the pipe fabbed and ready to go before the all clear was actually done. Or, more towards around jobs, and we're talking about AI, et cetera, jobs that in the past required you to physically be at the asset, but as you built kind of a capability, you can now do things, much further away. Like Lucien was talking about the lithium mine, right? I mean, these things you start getting to where, well, why do I need people to be at the asset? And it gives us the capability to concentrate what I would say is the competency of these folks to a center of excellence that the rest of the corporation can share. Because in this area of changing demographics, part of the issue we talk about, there will be different jobs. We will use technology, right, in terms of changing. And I think what we are finding is that core competency of understanding the basics, using the technology, we can then afford ourselves to concentrate them in areas to really service the corporation. Yeah. I think, honestly, the pain point we still need to work, I encourage people to go to the talk this afternoon from the Open Asset Digital Twin Group. There are some very clear, what I would say is pinch points that, I would say the industry is not yet embraced. And this is going to be ripe, to be honest with you, in terms of other industries have already solved this problem. Yeah. Like I can go to the media and entertainment. I can go to the, to the Pixars. I can go to the Defense Department. This is not an issue in these industries because the industry basically had to change. Automotive is another prime example. Construction. And I think from our standpoint, part of this is a little bit as a community, do we answer the call and quite frankly, follow in the footsteps of stuff that's already been developed? Or are we going to continue to fight the battle of, no, wasn't invented by us? I think that tension point will be something we'll still have to continue to address as a community.
Yeah, I think on the developer side, it's important that for us, what we're thinking about is open standard towards digital twins. We once looked at developing a complete digital twin framework. Then we came to the conclusion that most of our customers already had a digital twin framework, and what was most important is that we could feed into that. So if we're making a power unit set, our digital twin can feed into their overarching asset digital twin. If we're developing as we develop our APM application, that it can fit inside of their digital twin for that asset. So for us, we're moving more towards open standards, so customers can plug and play our digital twins quickly into their environments and be up and running.
No. Well, actually, when we are talking about digital twin, besides the industries that actually, in fact, Michael has mentioned, by the way, I am I have looked at a lot of Chinese companies, by the way. Who else is ahead in our industry? Chinese companies. Because one big reason why they are ahead of us, because their supply chain, as a matter of fact, actually, because when they started building these plants, their strategy was always buy the latest, buy the latest. And actually, I look at a lot of the actually best-in-class plants. Most of them are in China. And one of the big reasons is because, by the way, they have design institutes. As a matter of fact, actually, these design engineering is very different from EPCs like we have over here. Over there, every design, everything is done actually by your different design institutes. And actually, then it's not like here a lot of times, actually, unfortunately. So it's also there are digital countries, countries are trying to, leapfrog and some of this, if we don't move fast and so forth, we are going to be facing more and more increasing competition. Go ahead, Rishi.
And I'm glad you brought that up. I wanted to build on that because I mentioned earlier that it's not uniform around the world. And I'll tell you the extreme to which it's true what you said. So one of the businesses that we have in Honeywell is our energy and sustainable solutions business. This is the Honeywell UOP business where we license a lot of technologies. And we have a lot of new technologies we continually bring. You go to a Western company and the question you get asked is, how many of these licenses have you done? And how big were they? And if you don't have a dozen of them, you can forget it usually. You fly to China, and the first question you ask is, can I be first? And if the answer is yes, they will move at warp speed to be first. Because it's a game of who can be first because they create a demonstration unit and that pride and all that. So it's a completely different mindset. It's almost the opposite. If there's two more in China, to be number 3 is less exciting. But if they can be number 1, it's full speed ahead. So it's the opposite, which means it ends up de facto being the place where you demonstrate. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy because at some point the new technologies go there and then it just gets further ahead. So it's one for us to remember as a community because it is happening.
Yeah, good. Well, let's see, any other question? Yeah, go ahead, ma'am.
Hi, yes, thank you. I'm Megan Snethlich from Vera. I'm Director of Client Development. Just to pile on to that conversation, I wanted to ask, when we're talking at a high level about open architecture, separating data from software, connectivity, cloud-hosted solutions, these are all high-level enterprise, corporate-level strategies. But, Michael, you called out in your presentation as well that one of the critical KPIs in, success of how we're enabling these different solutions is going to be on-site and the way we're changing the way, at a facility level work is getting done. So, and then looking to, what's coming next by feeding in experiential data back into the process. So how do you bridge the gap, in an organizational or, enterprise level wide deployment between, what's happening on site, the way we're doing work, and, some of these high level strategies that we're talking about today?
Okay. Anyone?
I can start with some of my comments. I think you go back to there's a lot in your question because it's a deeper question than just straightforward, I do this. I think practically looking at, the fundamentals on the one side, what are the fundamentals that will dictate the process? How do I set it up and what are the critical success factors to make sure? Then layer into that, all your different models, whether it's 3D models, whether it's, reliability models, everything else, so that you've got the fundamental construct to be able to do that. Then, float into your different, performance data and historical data so that you can build into the pieces of equipment. And then thereafter, actually then started calibrating and getting the information available. When you roll that out to the second and third and fourth and, fifth plant, then you've already got, the digital twin on a number of, fronts and dimensions. It is your digital twin on, the performance data, reliability data, supply chain data, and then once you utilize that, then you can do comparisons and utilize that for the second and third plant. So, there will always be differences in conditions, but that's part of your construct that you built in from day one to be able to cater for those differences and then make sure that you address that. But it is a sequential thinking and intentional structure that's following the strategy that you need to put in place.
Good. Okay. Anyone else? Okay. I'd like to maybe broaden our discussion a little bit from AI, if I may. There are so many other technologies as well moving pretty fast, especially, most visible one is right now the robotics and drones and so forth in our plants. I was going to say, if you'd like to mention perhaps, besides AI, what other technologies you are trying to deploy in your operations and so forth, maybe certainly that would be interesting. Maybe Rob, you maybe could we start with you. Do you have some other thoughts? Where are you focusing your energies these days besides AI?
Yeah, no, I mean, there's a lot been going on, again, probably for about 10 years in robotics. It was originally Spot the Dog, and then we've moved on beyond that. And then drones, and the thing you've got to be careful of, it doesn't become sort of somebody's pet hobby. And I would say probably it started off like that. Well, isn't it wonderful because we can do this? Yeah, but what does that do to the question? What does that do for the operator or the technician actually at the facility? So I think the way we've changed it now, it's much more business pull, business use case pull. And some of the things we're seeing the most successful are sort of drones, crawlers, inspections, those sort of things, particularly both from an oil and gas perspective and also in refineries. And it's that, and it's sort of magic. It's collaboration, it's partnership, it's the folk in the central teams that know all the different bits of the technology, but then the people actually out at the refinery or offshore on the oil and gas facility actually saying, you know what, there's a problem. We do still talk about pain points, Michael. We have tension as well, but we talk about pain points.
Pain and tension, right?
Yeah, pain and tension. We've got lots of
Throw panic in there, then we got them all, right?
We got everything. So they'll be saying, yeah, if I could just do this, that would really help me with whatever the thing they're looking at. And if you can get that to connect, and then actually you'll be seeing the business saying we use Viva Engage as one of our sort of internal comms. They'll be sort of talking about these success stories. So we've seen them, we've had them, but it's quite different. It's going to be very much business pull rather than we started off 10 years ago as a central push, and that That didn't really work. It looked really cool, but it didn't really work very well. It's got to be the business pull.
To me, it's one of those things of, I don't know what's worse, right? I mean, it's one of the passion of the robotic COE, right? In terms of the technology, or is it the passion that people have even for the concept of a digital twin? I do think, I agree with Rob, is that, a lot of this started with, unfortunately, maybe a little bit erred on the shiny key or solutions looking for problems. But I do see where, quite frankly, there has been advancements in capability in robotics technology that physically will change the way we work. For example, how many people remember that the best practice for inspecting a flare tip was building a 200-foot scaffold or putting somebody in a lift basket off the edge of a 500-ton crane that's got enough stick to reach the top? Like, I don't think, hopefully nobody is still doing that, right? I mean, the drone technology has advanced in such a manner where making the workplace safer is a key attribute. And I would look at that as there are services out there that can do that capability. I think, there are other attributes where we look at, underwater, right? Underwater type subsurface, like drones continue to expand in terms of change the way we work. I think it's interesting is, in my opinion, our industry hasn't landed on that next pillar, right? Like, you got people running around, like, okay, we got, robots doing operator rounds. It'd be like, okay, well, let's define what an operator round actually is. And I had a discussion with one of the folks in the room where I was like, look, do you really think that people will actually be doing rounds 5 years from now? Like, what are we trying? If they are going into the field to capture experiential information, my question is, why haven't you automated that, right? I mean, because I think in some cases, the robotics, we got a little bit where, look what I can do with the robot versus, well, what are the alternatives, right? I mean, my classic was, and I'm embarrassed to share this with the room, but it's like one of those where we had, robot, image recognition, et cetera, to where we can read a pressure gauge and translate that into a value that we can then put into our historian, right? And it's like, well, why didn't you just put a wireless sensor there? And then, quite frankly, you can do this, 24/7. I think, there's obviously more, I'm simplifying that, there's more to that. But I think, the misapplied of robots is not helping us. As an industry, finding areas where we are physically reducing risk and improving the way our workforce is out there. I mean, the drone swarms, I'm sure a lot of you have seen that in terms of capability, trying to do inspections where it's sending people on ropes, et cetera. I see that advancement, quite frankly, making the world safer in the future. I think that is a great application. But the one caveat I'd share with those in the uses of drones, let's not go back to the early 90s where you're out taking Polaroids. Sending robots into the field to gather information that is not geospatially acknowledged in the metadata is worthless, right? I mean, who wants to go through hours of videotape guessing where you found an issue? Who wants to go through hours and hours of images hoping that you're like, oh, we have a bolt loose someplace, right? The concept here is that if you're going to use that technology, let's make sure we're thinking of the full end-to-end. And go back to the things that I shared earlier. Reality first, geospatial awareness, engineering data, interoperable with AI and ML. Like, from my standpoint, I see a great opportunity for the future as robots continue to get, bipods instead of quad pods, their electrical classification, certification. I mean, there's a lot of advancements. I do think that will be another, what I'd say is technology that we as an industry will embrace and we will figure out how to make our workplace safer.
Yeah, good, good. Go ahead, Rich. Good.
Yeah, and I think underpinning that, because what makes a robot smart? I mean, first of all, if you talk about AI, it mimics human intelligence, which means you have to sense like a human. We see. So machine vision, computer vision, that to me is the big technology that frankly our industry is not yet using sufficiently.
Yep, great.
I'll give you an example. In the electronics industry, when they make a printed circuit board, they can, with an overhead camera, tell a defective one from a real one, and it would take us a magnifying glass to look at it for a very long time, and we wouldn't spot the defect. So that's a single camera replacing that. Why can't that technology find the loose bolt? It can. But training it for that purpose instead of training it to take a video or take a picture, I think that's the next evolution that we have room to go on.
I think I have a last question here, and also very quick replies if we could actually do this. Clearly, ultimate goal, it seems like for all industries and everybody's autonomous operations. And clearly, our industry, and a lot of times actually, we've been automating it, optimizing it, and so forth. And we are going to see, obviously, we are going to have autonomous cars soon, and autonomous planes flying all over the place, and so forth, and autonomous drones and autonomous robots and all of that. And we are, when you come to think about it, most of petrochem or process industries, we are still optimizing single process units. We are still quite far away even to trying to be in a position to optimize a whole plant. And forget actually what some companies are trying to do right now. You bring all the data from your plants out in the cloud and try to optimize all the operations and so forth. So I think we got a long way to go. But if you folks have any comments, certainly would be happy to hear them, because how do we get there? Because that's the ultimate goal for every industry and every company, is to start having autonomous operations. Go ahead, Cyril.
So maybe my first reaction will be, I'm not sure this is a goal.
Yeah.
I'm not sure the goal is to create a gigantic black box that describe inside the black box the behavior of your operations, and you don't know anything about it, nobody knows about it. I don't think this is the way AI should look like. I think when we speak about industrial applications, whether they are in process industries or not in process industries, we are not sorting cats and dogs pictures, or we are not sorting cars from buses. We are doing things that have an impact on the safety of people, working with dangerous products, with a very significant economical outcome, whether it works or not. So I think simplicity, explainability, not putting black box that nobody understands how they work, I think should be a goal for our industry. And this transparency and openness and the ability of sharing should be an attribute of the way we do business. It should not be about, let's use magical power technologies to create something that we lose control about and we don't know what it is doing, because how do you guarantee in that context safety of people, economical outcome? I think we can address those very complex optimization, multi-dimension parameters. How do I increase my yield, reduce emissions, optimize energy consumption, maintain people safety, maintain cybersecurity? Those are complex optimization problems, but we can solve them with technologies that are explainable, transparent, clear, articulated, and control the outcome of those technologies.
Thanks. Anyone else? Lucian, go ahead.
Yeah, and I'm glad you asked that question as kind of the final question, because it's a very important one for us. And to me, I agree with him fully. Autonomous is not a dark building. Autonomous is a building where the production, every day is the best production day, and every worker is your most skilled worker because they benefit from all the experience before them. That's the definition. Your day is not dependent on the skill of the person that was in there, and your day is not dependent on the luck of something went your way from a reliability standpoint. It's based on data. That's autonomous. You're free from chance. but you're not, you still have humans involved in the process, but they're a lot better equipped to make a lot better decisions.
Good.
I think overall, the technology framework's there. I mean, we're not that far away. As we look at what we're doing from our APC technology, linking it to energy consumption, energy optimization, carbon intensity management, we're already doing that. We've been doing that for years now. Now we're starting to link in asset performance, equipment performance into that loop. So it's not far that you need to link all of these different technologies together. And a lot of our customers are starting to move in this direction, and we're moving alongside with them. So while it may seem like it's far away, I don't really believe it's that far away anymore. I think it's really finding partners you can work with, finding customers that are willing to start that journey and work on that journey with you, and beginning to move forward, because the foundational technology is there without a doubt.
Great.
I was just going to add one thing. I mean, again, I think similar to the autonomous vehicle, self-driving cars, it's cool and sexy, but until those engines become open source in terms of the technology, it's a black box and it's going to drag on forever. And I think from our standpoint, as you mentioned, the foundation is there. But what's limiting, in my opinion, the acceleration of moving towards automation or autonomous, because I agree with you, autonomy by itself is not the goal. Simplification of the work process, I absolutely believe in, but it's going to come back to the same part. Open, agnostic, separating hardware from software, software from data, that allows to invite additional innovation and capabilities on that journey. Because if anybody in this room, asset owner as well, think they can solve this by themselves, they're kidding themselves. And I think, to me, that openness in terms of the ecosystem that allows that capability will accelerate people moving towards more autonomy.
Yeah. Awesome. Folks, let's give a big hand. Awesome discussion. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.